Dr. Emma Thompson walked slowly across the private airfield in Manchester. The morning sun was just coming up, making long shadows on the ground. She carried her medical bag in one hand and her phone in the other. She had gotten a very important call an hour ago. A young boy in Scotland needed surgery right away. If she did not get there soon, the child might not make it. Emma felt tired but determined. She had been a doctor for 15 years now. She had saved many lives and worked very hard to get where she was. 5 years ago, she had bought her own private jet. It was not easy to afford. But she had saved every penny from her work as a brain surgeon. The plane helped her reach patients faster, especially in emergencies like this one. As she walked toward her white aircraft, Emma thought about the boy waiting for her. His name was Tommy. He was only 8 years old and had fallen from a tree. The doctors in Scotland said only she could do the special surgery he needed. Emma had done this type of operation many times before. She knew she could help him, but she had to get there quickly. Captain James Mitchell stood near the plane. Emma had hired his company yesterday for this emergency flight. She had flown with different pilots before, but this was the first time working with James. He was a tall man with grey hair and wore a crisp blue uniform. "Excuse me, Miss," James called out as Emma approached. "You cannot board this aircraft." Emma stopped and looked at him with surprise. "I am Dr. Emma Thompson. This is my plane. I called your company yesterday for this emergency flight to Scotland." James looked at Emma from head to toe. His face showed doubt and suspicion. "I do not think so. The owner is supposed to be some important doctor. You do not look like someone who could afford a private jet." Emma felt her heart start beating faster. She had faced this kind of treatment before in her career. People often looked at her and made quick judgments. They saw a young woman and thought she could not be successful or important. But this was different. This was about her own property, her own plane. "I have all my documentation right here," Anna said in a calm voice. She reached into her bag for her papers. "There is also a child waiting for surgery. Every minute counts." James crossed his arms and shook his head. "Look, I do not know what game you are playing, but you need to leave immediately." His voice was getting louder now. Other people at the airport were starting to look in their direction. Security. Emma felt her face getting hot with embarrassment. She could see people staring at her. Some were taking out their phones to record what was happening. This was becoming a public scene. And she felt humiliated, but she tried to stay calm and dignified. Two security guards came running over. They wore yellow vests and serious expressions. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of them asked. "This woman is trying to board a private aircraft that does not belong to her," James said firmly. "She claims to be the owner, but that is clearly impossible." Emma looked at the security guards with pleading eyes. "Please, just look at my identification. I am Dr. Emma Thompson. This is my plane. I have been flying with this aircraft for 5 years. There is a child in Scotland who needs emergency surgery." But James had already made up his mind. He did not want to listen to her explanations. "I know what the owner looks like. And it is not her," he said confidently. The security guards looked uncomfortable, but they followed James's instructions. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us to the terminal," one of them said gently. As they escorted Emma away from her own plane, she felt deeply hurt and angry. But she remembered her grandmother's words from many years ago. Her grandmother had been a wise woman who had faced many challenges in her life. She had told Emma, "Dignity is something no one can take from you unless you let them." Emma walked with her head held high. Even though inside she felt broken, she thought about little Tommy waiting for her in Scotland. She thought about all the times she had faced discrimination and prejudice. She thought about her journey from a small apartment to becoming one of the best surgeons in the country. People continued to stare and whisper as she was led to the terminal building. Emma knew this moment would change something important, but she did not know what yet. Emma sat in the airport lounge feeling defeated and worried. She had her phone pressed to her ear, trying to find another way to get to Scotland. Time was running out for little Tommy. Every minute that passed made his condition more dangerous. Mary, "Please keep trying," Emma said to her assistant on the phone. "Call every charter company in Manchester. I do not care how much it costs. That little boy needs surgery in the next few hours." Mary's voice sounded stressed through the phone. "Dr. Thompson, I am calling everyone I can find. Most pilots are already booked for the day. The few available ones are asking for triple the normal price because it is such short notice." Emma closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had been saving lives for 15 years, but today she felt completely powerless. Her own plane was sitting just outside the window, but she could not use it because of one man's wrong judgment about her. Meanwhile, back at the aircraft, co-pilot David Williams was walking up to the plane. He had driven from his home in Liverpool early that morning. David was a friendly man in his 40s who had been flying for 20 years. He loved his job and took pride in helping people travel safely. David noticed that James looked upset and angry. There were still a few security guards standing round, and some airport staff were talking in small groups. Something had clearly happened while he was driving to work. "James, what is going on here?" David asked as he approached. "Why does everyone look so serious? Are we having mechanical problems with the plane?" James shook his head and crossed his arms. "No mechanical problems. Just some woman who tried to claim she owned the plane. Can you believe that? She was obviously trying to scam her way onto the aircraft." David raised his eyebrows. "A woman tried to claim she owned this plane. That is strange. What did she look like?" "She was young, maybe in her 30s, James said with annoyance in his voice. "She carried a medical bag and wore simple clothes. She kept saying she was some important doctor, but I could tell she was lying. Real doctors do not look like that." David felt confused. "James, this plane does belong to a doctor. Dr. Emma Thompson has been our client for 5 years. She uses this aircraft for medical emergencies all the time." James waved his hand dismissively. "I know what Dr. Thompson looks like. This was definitely not her. This woman was young and did not look important at all. She was probably some criminal trying to steal the plane." David pulled out his phone and started searching. "James, what exactly did this woman look like? Can you describe her again?" As James described Emma in more detail, David's eyes grew wide with concern. He quickly found a news article from the previous week and showed it to James. The headline read, "Local surgeon saves dozens in hospital emergency," and there was a large photo of Emma in her medical scrubs. "James," David said quietly, his voice full of worry, "that is Dr. Emma Thompson. She really does own this plane. She has been flying with us for years." James looked at the phone screen and his face turned completely white. He grabbed the phone from David's hands and read the article carefully. The woman in the photo was exactly the same person he had just thrown off the aircraft. The article talked about how Dr. Emma Thompson had worked for 18 straight hours during a hospital emergency last week. She had performed surgery on 17 different patients and saved all of their lives. "This cannot be right," James whispered, but he knew it was true. The evidence was right in front of him. David continued reading over James's shoulder. "It says here that she has donated millions of pounds to medical research. She has won awards for her work with children's Hospitals, James. She is one of the most respected doctors in the entire country. James felt sick to his stomach. He kept reading and found more information about Emma. She had grown up in a poor family, but had worked her way through medical school. She had started a charity that provided free medical care to people who could not afford it. She had written books about brain surgery that were used in universities around the world. There is more, David said softly. She also established the Scholarship Fund for Aviation Safety Training. That fund helped pay for your certification courses 2 years ago, James. She is the reason you have this job. James felt like his whole world was falling apart. He had just humiliated and embarrassed the woman who had indirectly helped fund his career. His prejudice and arrogance had blinded him to the truth. Now, he realized the terrible mistake he had made. Less than an hour after the incident, a black car pulled up quickly at the airport terminal. Robert Clark, the manager of the aviation company, jumped out and rushed inside. He had received a very urgent phone call from David Williams about what had happened. Robert could not believe what he was hearing. Robert was a man in his 50s who had worked in aviation for 30 years. He had built his company on trust and respect. He knew that Dr. Emma Thompson was one of their most important clients. She had been flying with them for 5 years and had never caused any problems. She was always polite, professional, and paid her bills on time. Robert found Emma sitting in the corner of the airport lounge. She was still on her phone, speaking quickly to someone about finding another pilot. Her medical bag sat beside her, and she looked tired and stressed. Robert could see the worry in her eyes as she talked about the young patient waiting for surgery. "Dr. Thompson," Robert said as he approached her table. His voice was full of genuine sadness and regret. "I cannot express how deeply sorry I am about what happened today. This is completely unacceptable behavior from our company." Emma looked up from her phone call and ended the conversation. She studied Robert's face and could see that he was truly upset about the situation. "Mr. Clark, I understand that mistakes happen," she said quietly, "but there is a child's life at stake here. Every minute that passes makes his condition worse." Robert sat down across from Emma and looked directly into her eyes. "Dr. Thompson, I want you to know that James Mitchell has been terminated immediately. He no longer works for our company. We are also reviewing all of our hiring and training procedures to make sure this never happens again." Emma nodded slowly, but her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about a long journey to become a successful doctor. She remembered growing up in a small flat in Birmingham with her grandmother. They did not have much money, but her grandmother always encouraged her to study hard and follow her dreams. Emma thought about all the times during medical school when people had doubted her abilities. She remembered the professors who said she was too young, too inexperienced, or not smart enough. She thought about the nights when she studied until 3 in the morning while working to part-time Joe. BS to pay for her education. She remembered the day she bought her first stethoscope. She had saved money for 3 months, eating simple meals and walking everywhere instead of taking the bus. When she finally had enough money, she went to the medical supply store and held that stethoscope like it was made of gold. It was the first real tool of her profession, and it made her feel like a real doctor. Emma also thought about all the patients she had helped over the years. She remembered the first time she saved someone's life during surgery. She was only 28 years old, and her hands were shaking. But she had focused and done her job perfectly. The patient was a little girl who had been in a car accident today. That girl was healthy and happy, going to school and playing with her friends. Her grandmother's words came back to her clearly. Her grandmother had lived through many difficult times and had faced discrimination herself. She had always told Emma, "When people try to make you feel small, Remember that you carry the dreams of all those who came before you. You are not just representing yourself, but everyone who believed in you. Mr. Clark, Emma said finally, I do not want revenge against James or your company. What I want is real change. I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else. Just then, James Mitchell appeared at the entrance to the lounge. His pilot uniform was wrinkled and his face looked pale and ashamed. He walked slowly toward Emma and Robert, his head hanging low. He had been thinking about his mistake for the past hour and felt terrible about what he had done. Dr. Thompson, James said, his voice barely above a whisper. I do not know what to say. I was completely wrong about you. I made terrible assumptions, and I am deeply sorry. Emma looked at James carefully. She could see that his remorse was genuine. He was not just sorry because he had lost his job, but because he realized he had hurt another person unfairly. Emma had learned over the years that people could change if they truly wanted to. James, Emma said gently, we all make mistakes in life. The important thing is not the mistake itself, but what we choose to do next, how we learn from our errors and become better people. James nodded, tears forming in his eyes. He knew that Emma was giving him a chance to make things right. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at the airport. Emma stood in her office on the 20th floor of Manchester General Hospital. The large windows gave her a beautiful view of the city below. On her desk were spread out many papers, blueprints, and architectural plans. She was working on something completely new and different. Emma had made a decision that surprised many people. Instead of taking James Mitchell and the aviation company to court, she had chosen to turn her painful experience into something positive. She wanted to create real change that would help other people in the future. Mary, come and look at these plans, Emma called to her assistant. Mary had been working with Emma for 3 years and had never seen her so excited about a project. Mary walked over to the desk and looked at the papers. What is all this? Dr. Thompson. Emma smiled and pointed to different sections of the plans. This is the Clear Skies Initiative. It will be a training center where aviation professionals can learn about sensitivity and respect. We will also provide scholarships for young people from poor backgrounds who want to become pilots or doctors. Mary looked amazed. You are creating all of this because of what happened at the airport. Exactly, Emma said. I realized that James Mitchell was not the only person who thinks this way. There are many people in different industries who make quick judgments about others. If we can educate them and change their thinking, we can prevent this from happening to other people. The story of Emma's experience had spread quickly through social media. Someone at the airport had recorded the incident on their phone and posted it online. Within days, millions of people had seen the video. Many people shared their own stories of discrimination and unfair treatment. Major news outlets picked up the story. Newspapers, television stations, and radio programs all wanted to interview Emma. Her phone rang constantly with requests from journalists who wanted to hear her story. Emma was very careful about which interviews she accepted. She did not want to focus on the negative aspects of what had happened. Instead, she wanted to talk about solutions and positive change. Helen Baker, a journalist from the Manchester Evening News, came to interview Emma at her office. Helen had been following the story since it first appeared on social media. Dr. Thompson, Helen said as she sat across from Emma, your response to this incident has been remarkable. Most people would have wanted revenge against James Mitchell and the aviation company. They would have sued them for a lot of money. Emma thought carefully before answering. Helen, I learned something important from my grandmother many years ago. She told me that revenge only creates more pain in the world. But when you choose to create positive change, You create hope for the future. I would rather build bridges between people than build walls that separate them. Helen nodded and continued writing notes. Tell me more about the Clear Skies Initiative. Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. We have already received support from major aviation companies across the country. Several medical organizations want to partner with us. Even some government officials have called to offer their help. The initiative was growing faster than Emma had expected. Companies were donating money. Volunteers were offering their time. And young people were already applying for the scholarships. Emma opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a colorful card. This came from the family of little Tommy, the boy I was trying to reach in Scotland that morning. He made a full recovery from his surgery. The card was handmade with crayons and markers, in a child's handwriting. It said, "Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for turning your pain into purpose. You are my hero." Emma smiled as she read the card. Tommy's mother told me that she explained to him what had happened. Even though he is only 8 years old, he understood that sometimes good things can come from bad experiences. Meanwhile, James Mitchell had been working hard to change his life after losing his job. He had spent many days thinking about his behavior and attitudes. He realized that he had been wrong about many things. James had started volunteering at a community center in his neighborhood. He was teaching young people about aviation and aircraft safety. He had also begun attending diversity workshops to learn more about treating all people with respect and dignity. "I want to make up for my mistakes," James had told the workshop leader. "I want to become a better person and help others avoid making the same errors I made." Emma had heard about James's volunteer work through mutual friends. She was pleased to know that he was trying to change and grow as a person. The Clear Skies Initiative was becoming more than just a training program. It was becoming a movement that inspired people to treat each other with kindness and respect. 6 months had passed since the difficult morning at the Manchester airport. Emma now stood behind a wooden podium at the National Aviation Conference. In London, the large conference hall was filled with hundreds of people. Pilots, airline executives, airport managers and aviation professionals from all over the country had come to hear her speak. Emma looked out to the audience and felt nervous but confident. She had given many medical presentations before, but this was different. This was about changing hearts and minds, not just sharing medical knowledge. "Good evening, everyone," Emma began, her voice warm and clear. "6 months ago, I experienced something that changed my life forever. I was prevented from boarding my own private jet because someone made assumptions about who I was based on how I looked." The audience was completely silent, listening to every word. Emma continued, "I want to share with you what I learned from that experience. Change does not happen overnight. Real change takes time, patience, and hard work. But it does happen when we choose courage over comfort and understanding over anger." In the front row of the audience sat James Mitchell. He was wearing a simple suit and listening carefully to Emma's words. Over the past 6 months, James had completely transformed his life. He had become one of the strongest supporters of the Clear Skies Initiative. James now spent his time traveling to schools and training centers, speaking to young people about aviation and the importance of treating everyone with respect. He shared his own story of making mistakes and learning from them. Many people found his honesty and willingness to change very inspiring. "I want to take a moment to thank someone special," Emma said, looking directly at James. 6 months ago, this person made a terrible mistake that hurt me deeply. But instead of staying angry, we both chose to learn and grow from that experience." Emma paused and smiled. "I want to thank James Mitchell for teaching me that redemption is possible for everyone." "James, would you please stand?" James slowly stood up from his seat. His eyes were filled with tears, but they were tears of gratitude and hope, not sadness. The entire audience began to applaud. The sound filled the large hall as people clapped for whole minutes. James had spent months working to make up for his mistake. He had written letters of apology, volunteered at community centers, and attended training sessions about diversity and inclusion. Emma's forgiveness had given him the strength to become a better person. The Clear Skies initiative has grown beyond my wildest dreams. Emma continued after the applause died down. We have now trained over 10,000 aviation professionals in sensitivity and respect. We have provided scholarships to 500 young people from poor backgrounds who want to pursue careers in aviation and medicine. The audience applauded. Again, impressed by these numbers, Emma raised her hand to quiet them down. But the most important thing the Clear Skies Initiative has done is remind us all that we are stronger when we lift each other up, when we choose to see the best in people instead of making quick judgments. We create a better world for everyone. After the conference ended, Emma walked through the London airport toward her private jet. It was the same aircraft where everything had started 6 months ago. But now, everything was different. As Emma approached the plane, she saw a young woman in a pilot's uniform doing the pre-flight check. The woman looked up and smiled professionally. "Good evening, Dr. Thompson. I am Captain Lisa Martin. I will be your pilot tonight. Are you ready for a takeoff?" Emma smiled back at Lisa. Lisa was 26 years old and had grown up in a poor family in Wales. She had received one of the first scholarships from the Clear Skies Initiative. The scholarship had paid for her flight training and helped her become a commercial pilot. "Yes, Lisa, I am ready," Emma said as she climbed into the aircraft. As the plane lifted off from London and climbed into the dark sky, Emma looked out the window at the lights of the city below. She thought about her grandmother's wise words from many years ago. She thought about little Tommy, who had made a full recovery from his surgery. She thought about James Mitchell and his journey from making mistakes to making a difference. Emma realized that sometimes the most painful experiences in life become the foundation for our greatest contributions to the world. One moment of discrimination had turned into a movement of hope and change that was affecting thousands of people. The plane flew higher into the starful sky, carrying Emma toward another medical mission. But now she carried something else with her too. The knowledge that kindness and forgiveness could transform even the most difficult situations into opportunities for a positive change. The end.